Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to this week's edition of The Loop Live by MediaCom. My name's Josh Gallagher. I'm MediaCom's Chief Product Officer for all of APAC. And the reason why I'm presenting today is it's something that has been bugging me for the last 12 months. This time last year, we came into sale period seeing massive growth for our clients, but not really having a hold of how we plan through mega sales and plan through e-commerce events that have already started hitting us. So what we've done is we've embarked on some work with Facebook, and I'll introduce Carlos in a moment, who's going to help me present from Facebook, around a study around planning better for mega sale events and what we can learn from our clients' campaigns that can be applied in the future, and especially applied in what is going to be a really tricky but interesting time of year coming into post-COVID or still within the pandemic period this year. Carlos, over to you just to do a really quick introduction before you present and say hi to everyone.
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. My name's Carlos Palacios. I'm a strategic comms planner at Facebook, and I've had the pleasure of working with Josh and the guys at MediaCom on this mega sales analysis project.
So what we're going to do today is have a look at mega sales, and we've kind of gone mega sales mad a little bit at the moment. We see definitely within Southeast Asia. We've already had 9/9, we're coming into 10/10, massive Singles Day, 11/11, 12/12, Christmas. It'll go into Chinese New Year. It's a monthly festive that happens every kind of 6 months of the year. I saw within other markets, India, Australia, with Amazon, they're backing in Prime Day into Black Friday, into Cyber Monday, and then leading into the big retail Christmas period. So it's definitely something that we need to know about, and we need to think about how growth works within these times as well. But what we found is that, yes, we're getting huge growth, and I'll flash up some very flashy numbers in a moment around the growth that's coming out of mega sales for clients. But what we realized is we don't have a handle on planning around mega sales. We don't have a solid understanding of what that rule of thumb is, or a testing of the rule of thumb around mega sales in APAC. So we're going to take you through some analysis today. Some very top-line analysis of a much longer white paper that's been produced using Southeast Asia as the base and using data from Southeast Asia. But I think for the other markets into North Asia, India and Australia, while the data may not be exactly coming from those markets, it's still relevant in the way that we might test, the way that we might rethink some of these sales periods and go back this year or even into next year and have a think about how it works. I spoke about some numbers. There's been unprecedented disruption in the way that we do e-com, and I think that that's been accelerating, but this year it's accelerated even more. Right, 80 million items were sold on Shopee on one platform during 12/12. We're seeing 11 times plus in some categories like consumer electronics on return on advertising spend for sales. These are huge numbers that are only going to get bigger within e-commerce, and we're seeing triple-digit increases on these platforms year on year across all of those markets. It's something that has really captured the interest of people, and it's definitely captured the wallets of people. But what we did is we look at this year as a precursor. Now, while we don't have data yet out of the platforms in terms of how sales went this year or how COVID has impacted those, it's definitely on the tip of people's tongues. When we look at 2019 versus 2020, this is an increase year on year on the interactions people are having around sales. So this is keywords on Facebook that people are having a look at to understand and talk about the sales period. So it's definitely something on people's mind, even coming into this year when we know people are strapped for budgets, but more people are hunting for essential items online than ever before. But back to the main point of what we're doing. We really didn't have a hold last year, I don't feel, on some really fundamental questions that need to be answered around planning. And these are really simple questions that we know for other channels, but the pace of change within e-commerce and the pace of adoption of mega sales has really put into question what we do know and what we don't know. What we found is looking at existing rule of thumb is that we don't know when to advertise. How far out do we need to advertise before a mega sale? Who do I advertise to within a mega sale? Are the consumers the same in a mega sale from a normal period for a brand? And then I'm going to hand over to Carlos to talk a little bit about how we're going to do this in the context of this year. So using some historical data and using what we know about what's happening this year to make a really informed and practical decision about how to attack 2020 mega sale period. The first question we asked was around when do I advertise? And the big thing that we found around when we advertise is that we need to maximise every week that we have in market. So that's every week from sale period to sale period. We need to actually maximise the way that we spend money and talk to our audiences through this time. We need to plan actually quite early for add to carts. So we can see here on this chart, which is the first chart, and this is overall cumulative add to cart to purchase volume analysis. We definitely see that big kick 2 weeks prior, and we know that that is always going to happen as people come in last minute. But there's still a really big volume of people that are adding to cart 3 weeks prior, even 4 weeks prior, as they build an understanding of the things that they're getting excited about for shopping in a sale period. Remember, everyone knows when these sale periods are coming. They're ingrained in people's behaviour around when to purchase at this time of year. But importantly, there's not just volume around these types of markets. We wanted to understand a few other things that affect how we plan, not just around volume, but how we plan around cost and what the real business opportunity around those things are. So what we did is we looked at the additional volume that we can get out of sale periods. And our big thing here is that we need to start early for effectiveness in driving purchase. For a long time, we've thought always 2 weeks prior, a week prior, and we've seen campaigns even shorter coming into sale periods. But the incremental volume opportunity 3 to 4 weeks higher is much bigger, even 4 weeks higher. Talking to customers and having volume come out of new customers, which we'll touch on later, is really important as we get into a sale period. 46% incremental volume is coming 4 weeks prior to a sale period. And also, interestingly, it's coming at a really effective use of media spend. We need to start early for efficiency. That 2 weeks prior is a really competitive time on platforms like Facebook, on marketplaces. So you see really high CPAs indexed to that sale week 2 weeks prior. There's really big opportunity as we look at lower CPAs coming 3 weeks and 4 weeks prior. So we've got volume, we've got the effectiveness that comes from capturing those people first, the opportunity against competitors, and importantly, when we're thinking about managing budgets over that time, a much lower CPA compared to those 2 weeks prior. So being able to stretch budget, capture that audience, but do it in an efficient way is something that we can really hold on to coming into this sales period planning. The second one, and I've kind of touched on this a little bit, but we really wanted to understand who do we actually need to target within this period. We know that as our clients' budgets get a lot tighter, we often default to our own customers, the thing that we know really well. We know our own customers might purchase again. We think that they're the most efficient way to target because they've bought our products before, and we think that they will convert quicker. But what we've found is that actually at this time of year, when we have more people flood the market, when we have more people looking for deals, more people on platform, that it's actually the region's biggest sampling opportunity. And by that, we mean getting people to come in and buy your products, perhaps for the first time within the region, and steal off competition. What we did want to understand when the analysis was done is to make sure that we were comparing apples and apples, right? When you start to think about comparing audiences and the budget that you outlay to be able to get those audiences, you need to be able to be on a level playing field and on a level spend playing field. So what we did is we looked in this table, and I'll explain it a bit, at the top tercile, so the top performing accounts that sit within Facebook, and the bottom performing accounts, and indexed it against the bottom performing sales accounts and successful advertisers. And you can see within a relative tolerance around spend, the top tercile and the bottom tercile are spending the same amount. So there's the same volume of effort that's going in to making a sale. But what we can see is that ones that do it really well, so that's your top tercile, have a much lower average CPA, right? That's a huge difference in your cost per acquisition, and an even bigger difference in their return on ad spend, right? So that end sale and the amount of money that they're investing in that. So let's have a look at what the top tercile do, especially from that question around who to target. So keeping in mind that when we've thought about who to target in the past, often we've gone very remarketing heavy, talking to our own customers, trying to be as personalized as possible within the offers that we know, or even stretching that out to a 50-50 rule of thumb. So 50% remarketing and 50% prospecting for new people. And what you can see here across the week of sale on the right-hand side through to 4 weeks prior, comparing that top and bottom part of what we do. Definitely in some of the weeks, we're starting to see prospecting becoming much more important, right? Those top performing advertisers, the most successful ones in mega sale periods, are building momentum 3-4 weeks out, and they're targeting new customers. They're prospecting for new customers. Especially we can see massive differences here in 3 weeks prior. 70% of what the successful advertisers do is going to prospecting, and only 23% to remarketing, versus getting to an inverse for those within the bottom tercile. Even in 2 weeks prior, where definitely 50-50 was a rule of thumb, then we can start to think about how we start to manage that down, but still 60% is in prospecting. And then it can flip as we get to the week of sale. So instead of having a rule of thumb of 50-50 across a whole period, we need to think about tactics within different stagings of that period as well, and thinking about who we target. So we've got 3 big implications before we get into how we need to act this year. Skew a bit more to prospecting, have a think about how that works early on in your campaign. Don't retarget too much within that early stage, even with pressured budgets. Get in new customers as much as possible. The second thing, start it throughout the campaign period. Start early. Take advantage in the third point of lower CPA and return on advertising spend metrics throughout that whole period. So it's not just about the really competitive moments in a week out, in 2 weeks out, but starting further out and starting by getting more people are the big implications that we have at the moment. So I hope that makes sense. I'm going to hand over to Carlos now to take you through like how we're going to do that in the context of now, because things are changing and things are we're definitely living in a new accelerated world.
Okay, great. Thanks, Josh. So as Josh mentioned, I'm going to talk a little bit about how we do this in the context of 2020. And we wanted to leave you with this thought of more is more. More is more for us. There's really 2 things that I'm going to talk about. One is from a business opportunity perspective, where we think you can get more out of these sales days and where that opportunity lies. The second aspect is more kind of tactically around how to do it. And we think there's loads of great different tactics and opportunities that agencies and their clients can use to leverage to get more business results out of this period of time. Can I get the next slide, please? So the first point, again, I'm just going to build on what Josh talked about in terms of that growing prospecting and actually looking to target new customers. And that's because this time of the year really is when consumers are willing to try new brands, new products, and new categories. And this data on the left-hand side shows you is a percentage of what consumers think that during this time of the year, during end of sales year period, are they willing to try new products and categories more than other times of the year. And across the whole of Southeast Asia, it's definitely the case that consumers are willing to try more then, which makes intuitive sense to us, obviously, because it's the case that, okay, I'm going to try this new product because it's on sale, so my cost of entry is not too bad. Or if it's something that's really expensive, I could never used to afford it, now I can afford it, so I'm going to try this product. But it's really that time for new discovery and trying to win new consumers. Then I guess the next question is to say, okay, so we're saying go broad, look, prospect more, but how broad, how far should we go? Given that quite often we've always viewed mega sales as maybe something that is quite young, is for millennials, etc. How broad do we go beyond that? And this is where I think the importance of 2020 and the context of COVID is important to think about, because what we've seen is huge growth and penetration and increase in online e-commerce across all demographics. In fact, some of the fastest growing groups are being Gen X and boomers. So really, those consumer groups and those demographics are now in play for discovery and to buy new products and services. Okay, so let's think, where does that happen? And this is the only Facebooky chart that I have, and I'm just going to talk about it very briefly. There has to be one. But this is just, and there's a truism here. That if you're looking to get that discovery, new consumers, discovery from a consumer perspective happens on Facebook and its family of apps. It's one of the great things about our platform. It's where they come at this time of year for inspiration and find new ideas and find out about new products. Done. Next slide, please, Josh. The next aspect that we wanted to contextualize in terms of 2020 is obviously this has been a year like no other. It's been a year where it's been tougher than any other year, and there's been certain hardships. So going into this, a lot of us were debating, okay, is this traditionally the mega sales periods, they're fun, festive occasions. Are we going to be able to have that? Would it be the same this year? And there's two kind of like key data points that we kind of look to inform us in terms of where we might net out and land on that. And the first one is, yes, whilst people are expecting an impending recession, people are looking to save. And we think, and that's across the board and across 86% of people thinking that their finances will be impacted is a global figure. So people are looking for financial conservatism, but that means that they're looking for savings and deals. The second data point that we're looking for, or the trend that we're looking for, is that actually during COVID, people have been looking at ways for little luxuries, little moments of joys, little treats, and actually being able to spend and treat themselves is something that the consumer is looking for. And we believe that both these two factors will play in actually still making this a really, really big sales period and one that's still kind of festive in nature, which gets me to the next chart. Okay, so this is data that we're observing from the recent 9/9, and we're just looking at, okay, from content, what are people interacting with? And the thing that is driving most overperformance is fun, energetic, energizing, uplifting content. So that notion of this mega sales still being something that is about more fun, more energy, more excitement is still holding through, and perhaps even more so than previously that we've seen before. When I compare this data to 2019, there's been an increase in the amount of interaction with fun. So it really is still looking at being that place where, okay, I can spend to save, but I can also spend to kind of like enjoy and treat myself and have a bit of a pick-me-up given these times. Can I get the next slide? And in terms of trying to drive that excitement, and when we talk about the more different opportunities of how to do that on our platform and indeed on other platforms, again, here's some data from the most recent 9/9, looking at consumer interaction with different types of content. And so we've seen a real big increase in native video, in live. So consumers are kind of really having fun and interacting more with different formats and different types of experiences there. The other thing that seems to be really driving working well is having more voices in the market space. So not just being kind of like Lazada, Shopee and brands talking, but it's actually about consumer influencers talking and different voices in the market to give it really that festive feeling and give it that excitement. So more experiences and more voices. Can I get the next slide? And this is the last slide that I'm going to part with. And so, yes, while consumers are looking for savings and they're looking for deals, etc., from a brand perspective, we recognize that quite often there's going to be limitations to how far you want to discount, etc. And it should be worth noting that, and again, this is data from last year's 2019 sales period, that the consumer is looking for other things, and this varies by different markets. Some things are, some attributes will play greater importance in certain markets versus others, but there are other levers to play at during mega sales period, and it shouldn't just be about trying to quote price and win on discounting other brand equities are important, and there are ways at trying to win new and different types of consumers. So if we're looking to try and broaden our catchment and trying to broaden discovery into other groups, there's opportunities to play with different equities and different brand attributes, which might play into different consumer groups. And that's something that you should be deploying to try and win and look to push that penetration, push discovery into new places. And that's it for me. Again, the key theme for us from the context of 2020 is more, and there's more opportunity and more things to play with. And I'll pass back to Josh to wrap up.
Thanks, Carlos. I mean, I think that was really good. I think you raised a really good point there around like thinking about how we do things in a little bit of a different way, especially coming into this year as well, especially as competition increases with all of the brands starting to play a really active role around mega sales as well, and new brands and new occasions coming in. So firstly, just to summarize, when do I advertise? Maximize every week in market, make sure that you're planning as far out as possible, and taking advantage, especially now, of some of those opportunities around return on advertising spend and lower cost per acquisition, still taking into account that there's volume in the market longer than 2 weeks out. We know that it can be the region's biggest sampling opportunity. That means that you can prospect more. You can bring in new people into your brand that may stick around for the future. And as Carlos said, more is more, right? Have a way to be able to interact with these people. Keep it fun. If you look at the way that the marketplaces promote themselves throughout this period, yes, people are looking for price, but they're also looking for fun on platform. And I think that they expect that from our brands as well. So that's it for us today. As usual, we're on time. And if there's any questions, a few things to note for anyone interested. We have looked at kind of a step back from a full meta-analysis into some categories. Broadly, the findings ring true, especially for those mature categories that are in there. Things like health and beauty, things like baby and toddler categories that have been around for a while. They're definitely categories where the findings hold true. So I think, if there's questions, please reach out to myself and I can funnel them through. We are coming out with a full white paper that gives an in-depth analysis of how to attack these periods, a look in depth at the data and how to apply it over these times, and for clients to really understand how they're going to use and take advantage of mega sales. So thank you, and thanks to Carlos and the rest of the Facebook team as well.